All right, and here we are of episode 3 of Ramblings and Ravings. This one literally just popped into my head about a minute ago, and I'm not sure exactly how to phrase what this topic is, but I think broadly it's I'm just thinking about how extremely popular figureheads, whether it's in academia, media, or politics, people who are very specialized and knowledgeable in certain fields, how they seem to take their popularity in that field and then they start commenting on other fields or ideas that are, I don't want to say this in a condescending way, but are kind of beyond their expertise, and how I think it gets them into trouble. And just as some examples to maybe clarify what I'm talking about, I see figures, guys like Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, people like that generally who are very, I guess, knowledgeable and good to listen to on certain things. For example, Peterson and some of his early psychology stuff that made him famous. I think Rogan is very interesting, obviously, in fighting, like UFC, for example, and even just like other things about, whether it's like drug culture or other things like that. I think he does have interesting things to say, but it seems like a lot of people these days get so caught up in giving opinions or points that are maybe beyond what their knowledge base is, and then it tends to get them into trouble. For example, and it's maybe this is no surprise, but it almost seems to always come in when people who are outside of politics start talking about certain kinds of, let me just say it, I guess. I won't beat around the bush. But I mean, if you look at Joe Rogan, he was a guy who a couple of years ago, I probably would have had a pretty good opinion of, if you ask me. I mean, I watched a number of his podcasts. He does do great interviews, let's be honest. But it feels like, and I don't know if it was 2016 and 2020 elections and coronavirus, but it's really bizarre just to listen to these people almost just sway with the wind on certain topics. You have a guy, again, I mean, I know Joe Rogan's easy to bash, he's so big, but I mean, you have a guy in Joe Rogan who, he brings on a guy like Bernie Sanders. It's like, yeah, Bernie, how great he is. And honestly, it was an interesting interview. But then he also just seems to be obsessed with all of the weird COVID conspiracy stuff, just ideas on, gun laws, voting. And then the fact that he seems to be cool with a guy like DeSantis in Florida, it just seems to get into people a lot of trouble where they start swimming in pools that are maybe a bit too deep for them. And then people start taking those opinions seriously. And I think that's, again, I'm not saying that people can't comment on things. Who the fuck cares? Like, you can say, you can comment on things that you like. I mean, that's what I'm doing here, let's be real. But I think the issue is when people see you as an authoritative figure and take your opinion, your word as some kind of overarching truth. And I think that's one of the bigger issues, or maybe not an issue, but just something interesting that I've been seeing these days. The whole sports figures, Kyrie Irving, again, I'm not one of those like shut up and dribble folks, but it's like, okay, I don't really give a flying fuck about what someone like Kyrie Irving has to say about vaccines. Or just health or anything like that. It just, I think it's silly that just for whatever reason, prominent cultural sports figures, whatever it is, politicians do this all the time. Just look at when politicians tried to figure out, what exactly like Facebook and social media was and all those hearings about privacy. It was a fucking mess. But it seems to be, and maybe it's a social media thing, but it just seems to be there are so many opinions out there that are trusted or believed in simply because the person is famous, not because they have any kind of background knowledge or information. And let me also just say this. I'm not saying that you need to have like, you know, a 4-year degree in a field to have a valuable opinion on it. Obviously not. I don't think that's the case. But I think that when you have opinions that become so heavily amplified by social media, all forms of social media, and people just seem to buy in because so-and-so said it, not because it's based in anything in reality. And so, yeah, I hope I articulated my point relatively well here. It's just something that I've been seeing and thinking about mostly. I'm not saying I have an answer to it, but really just how there are just so many voices out there these days that are, I think, speaking about things that people should be, I think, rightfully fair to question and look into it on its own. And I'm for people voicing their opinions, but I also think on the other hand, we really need to be careful about the people that we trust or look into on certain subjects. Again, Joe Rogan's opinions on COVID compared to doctors and hospitals, I'm sorry, I don't fucking care what Joe has to say, other than the fact that it provides controversy. So yeah, just my thoughts out there. I'm sure it's something I'll continue to think about. But yeah, celebrity doesn't mean that they're worth listening to. Celebrity status, athlete status, political status, even to a certain point. Yeah, it's a tricky thing, and I'm sure I'll keep thinking about it.